You are listening to Topic Paranormal with your host, Georgina Holzmeyer, and the Paranormal Brain Trust, Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa. Topic Paranormal covers Paranormal Talk, Paranormal Tales, Paranormal Training, and so much more. Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts. And now, your host, Georgina Holzmeyer.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining us tonight on Topic Paranormal. Y'all are in for a treat. We have another Paranormal Brain Trust member that we're going to be interviewing tonight. It's Miss Cindy Little. She is my favorite smart person, and by the end of this interview, you will know why. So without further ado, Cindy, give us a little idea about what you do and why you do what you do. I'm really interested in knowing a little bit more about the educational psychology degree you have and how you feel that might benefit you in your investigations.
Okay. I graduated from Baylor several years ago with a degree, a PhD in educational psychology, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the paranormal, of course. And I taught at Baylor for about 8 years. I taught research and worked with some of their teacher ed students, and so probably how these two things connect, because my educational psychology degree really has benefited me in paranormal investigations, and how it's done that specifically is that it has taught me how to think critically. It has taught me how to analyze, question, and especially question my own assumptions and my own biases and try to identify those. So when I go into a situation where there's anomalous activity going on, then I look at that and I can say, okay, what's going on? Let's set my biases aside. Let's solve this puzzle. And so I was professionally trained through my graduate studies to professionally solve those types of puzzles, to analyze, take apart, evaluate, and try really, really hard to set assumptions and biases aside.
Oh, cool. That's got to be one of the reasons I love working with you so much, is because you are so unbiased. When we're in the midst of an investigation and there's actually activity going on, you're the first one, other than Robert, the skeptic, to go, hey, wait a minute, let's think this through. There might be some other ways of doing this. And so with the educational psychology, was that background of study geared toward teaching? Is it more the psychology behind teaching, or was it more focused on, like you're talking about, the critical thought processes, the analytical aspect?
Educational psychology is the study of how people learn and how people develop. And so, yes, that does include formal education, but that also includes informal education. For example, my dissertation was on science fiction fans.
Oh,
and
sweet.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I got to join a science fiction club and take Darth Vader trick or treating and
sweet.
a whole bunch of different stories for another time. But basically, the gist of my dissertation was, how do adults learn casually? Because we're all learners and we learn outside of the school setting all the time. And so it was a study of how these adult science fiction fans learned and then applied what they used when it came to their hobby.
Oh, neat. That sounds like a fun class or I guess dissertation. That would be a fun one to listen in when you were defending that, huh?
Well, I didn't think my defense was all that fun, but I hope it was fun for the people listening.
Oh, I bet it was. And so along the lines of the analytical, logical part, I'm one of those people that's not just super logical. I can think through something step by step if I have to. It's not my natural thought process. Do you feel like that's something that comes to you pretty naturally?
I think it comes to me fairly naturally, but then through my studies, I was trained to, use it and refine it. And it's just really come in handy.
Oh, yeah, I can see why. Well, share with me a little bit, if you will, about your pre-Palace Theater, me knowing you, paranormal experiences and investigations.
Well, I've been doing this for a little over 10 years, and I've always had an interest in this ever since I was little. Before investigating at the Palace, I'd never really had a paranormal, well, let me back up. I had one paranormal, what I would call possibly a paranormal experience, and that was just a few years ago. And then I had another one at the Palace that I can talk about later if you'd like.
Yes, we're definitely going to be talking about that one.
And, it started out with, there was this rumor in town that there was a haunted couch down at the furniture store on Bosque and Highway 6. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to go down there and check out the haunted couch. And they were, really welcoming. And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, come investigate the haunted couch. So that was my very first investigation. And I went, I set up cameras and took pictures and took, audio recordings and everything. And overnight we had stuff running and we didn't really catch anything, but the couch is still there and it's got a pretty good reputation. Nobody knows where it came from. There's rumors that there's bullet holes and blood under the cushions.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And I've seen some kind of icky stains under the couch cushions, but
no guarantee it's
I have
blood.
no idea what it is. I don't even want to know. But people bought the couch, took it home, and all these crazy things started happening at their house. There's like sulfur smells, and their drawers and cupboards started opening and shutting on their own. Well, of course, it freaked him out. So they brought it back to the furniture store and said, no, we do not want this couch. And they had it up by the front counter, and they had to move it to the back of the store because every time they would turn on their computers when the couch was near, their computers would act up. My phone died around the couch. I had a friend that her watch went kind of crazy around the couch.
Oh, wow.
And so, really, it's kind of a mystery. Nobody knows why the haunted couch makes things kind of go nutty.
That's going to bring up another topic eventually. And can furniture be haunted or possessed like humans? That might be another topic. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And now I was listening to one of the podcasts that you did, an interview, I want to say with Waco Business, not too terribly long ago. And I may have that name wrong. I'm going to have to get better about writing that.
It's Austin Meek. Yeah, he was the interviewer.
Yes.
And the name of his podcast escapes me, and I'm really sorry, Austin, if you listen to this. But yes, he interviews local Waco businessmen.
Yes. And in there you were talking about a particular experience you had at the Magnolia over in Seguin. Mm-hmm. And so will you share a little bit about that with our listeners?
Yes. I would say that is the first possibly paranormal experience that I've had. And what it was is the Magnolia Hotel, they have tours and it's a really active place paranormally. And so my husband and I were on a tour, and the wife and owner is very sensitive. She claims to be very sensitive. And so she says that she can see when the spirits are there and what they're doing. And of course, I am not like that at all. I am not sensitive at all. Just, I trusted her word. It's like, okay, whatever. And so we're in the kitchen and she says, okay, I don't even remember the name of the lady that liked to hang out in the kitchen. And she's like, oh, this is where so-and-so hangs out. She's a very feisty spirit. And so I'm standing there in the back by the sink. I'm right next to the sink, and there's this really tall man standing right in front of me. There's a whole group of us in there. And she's like, yeah, she's in here now. She's, standing right behind that man who was standing right in front of me. Now, the strange thing is before she said that, I felt the left side of my face just getting really, really hot. Like somebody, put a heater right up next to my face. And I thought that was just so strange. And of course,
it's not like the stove was on or.
I was checking everything.
Okay.
I was checking everything. I was looking for heater vents. I was looking for a hot water heater. I was looking for, anything that would just make the side of my face really, really hot. And so as soon as she said that and said, "Oh, the spirit's right there," which was basically next to me, then the heat dissipated.
Oh, wow. Almost like recognition and acknowledgement, and now she's done with you.
She's done with me. Yeah. She's done. And so I thought it was just very strange.
Yeah, that's kind of an odd experience, especially when you look at it from the heat angle versus the cold angle. What you hear most of the time is the cold, icy cold presence. There's a particular thought process out there that if it's hot, it's a demon or a not nice spirit. So that's another topic we'll be dealing with at some point as well. But I take it from our conversation that you didn't necessarily feel any hostility.
No. I had a hot face. That's really all I can say.
I bet your husband would agree with that too, huh? Oh,
he better.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of your husband, this is one of the conversations that we have regularly. A lot of us are married or have significant others. My husband is not interested at all in ever attending a paranormal investigation with or without me. Does your husband do any investigating with you?
No. No, it's just something he's not interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got the things that he's interested in, and this just isn't one of them. But, I really appreciate it because he's really supportive of, me doing these paranormal investigations, and he's always really sweet about buying me new gizmos and gadgets on Christmas and for my birthday. And so he's very supportive, and I appreciate that.
That's nice. My husband's real supportive as well. And his philosophy is it's possible, it's maybe even probable, but he doesn't need the proof. So he would rather just leave it alone as well.
That's kind of where mine is, and he's a little more on the skeptical side. He's just, I don't know if there's anything to it or not. But I come home with some stories, and then he's like, "Oh, well, that's kind of interesting."
That's kind of interesting. All right. Well, we're going to take a break here at this point, do a couple of commercials, and we'll be back in just a bit. Welcome back to our listeners. Hey, Cindy Little is still here with me. Yay! We're going to move into one of her most recent experiences, and that happened here at the Palace Theater in Marlin, Texas. So tell us about it, Cindy.
Well, that one was about a year and a half ago. It was when you all had your first Paranormal University, and I thought that looked really interesting. And so I've always wanted to come check out the theater, and I was a guest at the Paranormal University, and we were in the basement, and it's kind of dim down there, but you can still see pretty good. And I always have my tri-field meter with me or my data logger with me, and I'm half the time I'm looking down and I probably miss bunches of stuff. But this particular time, I had my data logger with me, and I'm looking down at it, and nothing's going off. And so I look up, and over in the corner of the basement is another guest, and he's got a millimeter which records temperature and electromagnetic frequencies, or electromagnetic fields, excuse me. And so he's kind of looking at his stuff. I'm kind of looking at my stuff. There's some other folks down in the basement as well. And then behind him, there was what appeared to be another guest, and, medium build. I'd say he was a guy in his mid-30s, dark hair, light shirt, dark pants. And I just thought, oh, it's another guest. No big deal. So, and my equipment's not doing anything. And so he steps out from behind the other gentleman with the millimeter, and he walks towards me and he gets about even with me and he disappears.
Poof.
Poof.
Gone.
He's gone. And I'm thinking to myself, it takes me a beat, and then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that was a ghost. Oh my goodness. And so I'm like, hey, I just saw a ghost. He just walked by. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, because I had never seen anything like that ever in my life. And I haven't seen anything like that since. And I've come back to the palace several times. I'm still looking for him or his friends. So, well, hopefully, I'll have more experiences like that, because that was just amazing.
And that was your first ever full-bodied apparition. Would recognize this guy if you saw him in a photo kind of situation in the 10 years you've been doing this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I spend a little time on that point because I know you'll back me up on this. You can go to investigations constantly. I average about 2 a month there for a couple of years, and you don't see these things. They are not happening that quickly, not nearly like the TV shows. So it's important, I think, for our listeners to realize that just because you go on an investigation, they're not necessarily going to perform for you on demand. And 10 years, that's a long time before you see your very first one.
Yes. If you look up Andrew Green, he was a ghost hunter in the 70s, and I believe he was a journalist as well, and he wrote one of the first ghost hunting manuals. Andrew Green went 60 years of investigating the paranormal and never once had a paranormal experience.
Wow. Oh, man, I'm feeling pretty lucky.
Yeah. And what I tell people that watch the shows and want to go on an investigation, I say it's a lot more like fishing. It's a lot of sitting and waiting, and you may catch something. You most likely will not catch something. So you have to be very patient. And if you're really not into just sitting in old buildings and waiting for stuff to happen or looking at equipment or whatever, it's probably not for you. And it's really interesting because whenever I take people on investigations that have never been on one, it's kind of hot and cold. They're either completely hooked and think, oh, this is great, I really want to keep doing this, or in 10 minutes they're ready to be out the door.
It's like I could be at home watching a football game or something.
Exactly. They're just like, this really isn't for me, and it's not anything like the TV shows.
No, nothing at all. Sitting in the dark, being quiet. You're not even really should be talking much, and just feeling and watching your equipment and listening. And it's very boring until something happens. And
that's what you're waiting for. And that's really cool. And that's what hooks me. I think that's probably what hooks everybody.
Oh, that's pretty much the reason I will sit for 2 or 3 hours solid listening to the audio recordings of nothing.
Yeah.
Mice breathing or something like that, but nothing paranormal. And it's in the hopes of catching that 1 or 2 EVPs.
Oh, yeah.
Now, have you caught EVPs on some of your investigations?
I have. I've caught a number of them. And I love EVPs. I think they're pretty common. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they're like I said, they're pretty common.
I feel like I've gotten quite a few, and it's interesting. And for those of you who are listening that don't know what an EVP is, bear with me. I forget that not everybody knows the terminology and the lingo if you're not involved in it, but an EVP is an electronic voice phenomena. And so basically it's a voice or a recording of a spirit, hopefully, that you don't hear at the time that you're asking the question, but yet when you replay the recording, you can hear it, or you can bring it up on your sound software and hear it there. So that's what we mean by EVP, just FYI. and they are fun. I've gotten a few of them, and it's interesting because the ones they actually have a classing system for this. A Class A is one that is super clear. The words are distinct. You can even pick up some personality in the voice, and anyone can hear it and interpret what it's saying. And it goes from there. I don't even know how far down it goes. Do you, Cindy?
I don't either. I mean, I'm not really super familiar with the classing system. I do know that it exists, and I probably would be more interested in it if I felt I had some EVPs that were very, very clear. I would say all of mine are human voices. They sound like human voices, but I'm not really certain as to what they're saying.
Yeah, it's Robert and I were having a good conversation about this. We're probably going to bring up on another topic as well, because we tend to get into the technical aspects of it. Our listeners will learn very quickly. We do love to debunk. We spend a large part of evidence review is debunking. A large part of the investigation itself are debunks. We're talking about, oh no, that's the train. When it comes through, it rattles this. Have you had that experience as well? You spend a lot of time debunking what you think you might be experiencing?
Oh, absolutely. My mind just goes there. It's like, let's look at possible natural explanations first. And you need to rule those out. It reminds me of one investigation I was at a private home where Grandpa had passed away, and he had this beloved china cabinet in the front room, and the door on the china cabinet always stuck. It was really hard to get open. Well, the family, right before he died, I don't even remember if it was right before or right after he died. Anyway, somebody managed to unstick the door on the china cabinet. And so, but they swore that after Grandpa passed, the china cabinet was now opening on its own mysteriously. And when we went in there to investigate, the floors were so uneven. So you had the china cabinet that was already leaning, the door was no longer stuck, and it was very much, this is just happening on its own because you now have a loose door on an uneven floor. Grandpa has nothing to do with opening up the china cabinet.
And that didn't necessarily mean that Grandpa wasn't around, but he definitely wasn't the one opening the cabinet doors.
And I mean, there's, I would say 99.9% chance that it was opening on its own. And there's this minuscule chance that Grandpa perhaps was going in and opening his favorite china cabinet.
That's always one of my favorite debunks as well, is was Grandpa prone to being the one to get the dishes out of the china cabinet? If that answer's no, in spirit world, why would he want to? If that wasn't something he did on a regular basis while he was alive, I don't know that it would be, grins for him afterwards.
No, I agree.
Oh, so tell me about another one of your favorite debunks.
Oh my goodness.
Are there quite a few?
I'm just trying to think. A lot of, I would say probably the orb pictures. I have had, I've gone to private homes before. I've done a lot of private home investigations. I don't do those anymore for other reasons, but a lot of times people will show me these pictures of spirits that they've caught, and they're always orbs, and say, look at these spirit orbs, look at these spirit orbs. You can see the faces in the spirit orbs. And they're so excited because they think they've caught something paranormal, when in fact, here comes me pouring cold water on their spirit orbs, saying those are dust or water vapor or fog, or, and what you're seeing is your brain's trying to make sense of a random pattern. So, I'm really sorry, but there's nothing paranormal here. It's a very natural explanation.
Especially since you've blown it up 120 times on a cell phone.
Yeah.
That tends to distort, know.
Well, that's how you see the face. You
Yeah.
know,
That's the way the face was
scary
created.
faces in there. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell you what, we're about to move into another commercial break, so hang with us. And when we come back, we're going to find out a little bit more about the paranormal classes that Cindy teaches. Welcome back from those awesome commercials. I hope you guys are out there supporting our supporters like that. And we're back. We're going to talk to Cindy now about another fun aspect of knowing Cindy Little. She actually teaches paranormal investigation at a local community college. So, Cindy, give us some ideas about what all that involves. Tell us about your program and how in the world did you get that started?
Well, how I got it started was just a random email I sent to the director of their community programs, which are the classes for fun. And I thought, oh, this is a long shot. They're not going to want to have a paranormal investigation class. Nobody's going to want to take that. And the director got right back to me and she's like, yeah, let's do 2 of them. And I'm like, all right, great. So this was about 4 years ago. And so I teach a paranormal investigating class in the fall. And then in the spring, I teach a class that's similar. It's called Waco Haunts. And we talk a little bit about paranormal investigating, but it's a lot more field trips where we go to different places here in the Waco area and do some investigating and take some tours and go to the Carroll Library at Baylor. And it's a little more just fun and getting out and seeing some of these places.
That sounds like the one I want to do.
Well, you can sign up anytime.
So give me a little idea about what would a typical class look like? Someone who signs up for this class, what can they expect as far as, are there tests?
Oh gosh, no. No, it's all for fun. It's all for fun. The one in the fall is a little more academic. We spend a little more time in the classroom. We go over the history of ghosts and hauntings and parapsychology, and then we look at apparitions, hauntings, poltergeists, and the parapsychological connections, basically how our minds interact and influence these types of activities. And that's what parapsychology is all about. And parapsychology is a scientific discipline. And within that discipline are these mixed up, the hauntings, apparitions, poltergeists. They're called anomalous experiences and spontaneous experiences. And so it is technically within the discipline of parapsychology. So we go a little bit into that. And then we go into tech, how to use tech in the field. And the number one rule is make sure you know what it's measuring, make sure you know what its intended use is. And we go over the fact that no, there is no such thing as a ghost detector.
Yay!
Because we don't even know what ghosts are yet. We're putting the cart way before the horse. So you can't detect something that you don't know what it is. And then we go into a little bit on how to investigate and the ethics behind that and how to treat properties and people with care and respect. And just make sure that if you're going to pursue this hobby, that you do it with care. And finally, we end up doing a investigation, usually at the Dr. Pepper Museum.
Oh, so they get to put into use what they've learned in the classes.
Absolutely.
Nice. Real world experience. I like
yeah,
that.
Absolutely.
Now, and I know from conversation with you that you have taken classes from the Rhine Research Center. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Or
yes.
Are you more involved in doing research for that group?
Well, I have been taking courses through the Rhine Research Center for, I'd say, probably the last 3 or 4 years. I highly recommend them. They used to be the Duke University Parapsychology Lab that was created by J.B. and Louisa Rhine in the 1930s, where they studied primarily ESP, psychokinesis, telepathy, clairvoyance, all of those things. And then eventually, I think it was in the 1960s or 70s, moved into their own building on the Duke campus and continued doing parapsychological research, which, like I said, there again, encompasses these types of phenomena. I'm currently working on a study proposal to turn into the Rhine for them to review and approve through their institutional research board to actually conduct a study here at the Palace.
Oh, sweet.
And so, actually do something really honestly a scientific study, and then hopefully publish that at some point. But that's kind of something I'm working on slowly. It's getting there.
Sounds like something that would require a certain level of thoroughness as well.
It is. And all of these investigations that I've been on at the Palace so far helps me understand the people involved, the place, just basically getting a feel for things. So, and that's going to help a lot when it comes to doing an official study, and which is going to most likely include interviews, investigations, and, being able to tell, this is something genuine going on versus this is something that we know is natural, all of that. And so the more experience I have here at the theater with the investigators and the theater itself, that's really going to help all that. But that's down the road.
Oh, neat. I can't wait to hear how that goes.
Well, you're going to be part of it.
Oh, awesome.
So.
I love it. Well, and the Palace obviously is very close to my heart. I've been investigating here for about 6 years. It was one of my first initial investigations, and obviously here I am 6 years later. And if I only get to do it twice a year, I kind of get sad. I kind of need to be here like every quarter. It works out well. It is. It's a phenomenal location, and I'm really excited for the theater to hear that you're working with that.
Yeah.
That is great. Let's talk a little bit about the tech aspect, because you are one of the few people that I know that thoroughly understands the difference between the DC currents, the AC current, what the tri-field meter measures, what the Mel meter measures. Whereas you listen to some of these other groups, or you check on some of these other websites, and even the TV shows, it's like, wait, you're on TV. Shouldn't you at least know what that particular piece of equipment does? Yeah.
I think you should.
I think so.
I think you should.
A little more credibility that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, I am not a tech person, but, I'm trying to make sure that I know what a tri-field meter measures, which is electromagnetic fields, and I try to understand the limitations of my camera or my phone or my audio recorder and the types of microphones. And I mean, you can really, really get deep into this stuff, and it's something that I'm not really deep into. I mean, but I try really hard to at least have the basics down. I just think that's important before you take something into the field. And when you're trying to, measure something like paranormal activity, and like you said, to debunk things, I mean, it's just really, really important to know your equipment and to learn your equipment and what it measures.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It's like you're preaching to the choir on that one, for sure. And I'm not very tech savvy myself, and so I will pick up a piece of equipment, try to figure it out. I get on the internet, I watch YouTube videos, I talk to people who are involved in some of those fields. Fortunately, I know a whole lot of people that do different things, electronics, electricians, mechanics, and things like that. And so it helps me to have people to bounce those things off of.
Me too.
I think anyone realizes that we don't know what ghosts are made of, therefore we cannot have an app on our phone that detects them. At the same time, being able to talk to those people that are in the electronics field and understand electromagnetic fields and how they work, it's it just brings a whole different level of understanding and experience to our investigations, I think.
Yeah, basically all you can say with your equipment is there is something anomalous going on in the environment. That's our limit right now is environmental enhancement. Basically all of our equipment is just to help us enhance our eyes, our ears, what we see and feel and understand about the natural world. It can't detect anything directly that might be paranormal.
And I can tell you, as I get a little older on this earth, my hearing and my vision aren't quite what they were a few years ago. So I really appreciate those things. Let's see. What's one of your favorite investigations that you've ever been on?
I would say here at the palace where I saw my ghost.
Yeah, you did.
I think
kind of
that's
hard
kind
to
of a
top that
hands
one,
down.
isn't it?
Yeah. Anytime I'm here at the palace, this is hands down my favorite place to investigate. Anytime the doors are open and I'm invited to investigate, I'm like, yeah,
definitely.
I'm there. I'm going. Yeah.
It's like, everybody else gets put off.
Yeah.
We'll change that schedule around. We'll get you there, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely so. Let's see. Just trying to think. Let's talk about equipment again for just a little bit. Do you have a favorite piece that you prefer to use more than any other, that you feel more confident in the results?
My tri-field meter. I carry it around like Linus carries around his blanket.
A little security there.
I love my tri-field meter because, and it's something I talk about in my classes, if there's something strange going on, it's nice to triangulate. And so if there's somebody, for example, doing a dowsing rod session, then, and then you're getting hits on your dowsing rod and somebody is in another corner and they're taking some pictures and getting some strange photos, and I'm on my tri-field meter getting some strange spikes, that tells me that there is something anomalous most likely going on. So anytime that you can triangulate these types of things. Also, I'm doing a lot more reading on parapsychology studies, and they're finding more and more that this type of activity tends to have some kind of correlation with electromagnetic fields. So somehow electromagnetic fields and paranormal activity are going hand in hand in some situations. We don't exactly know how or what's going on, but there seems to be a relationship there.
Oh, that kind of makes sense. I tell you, when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to explore that a little bit further and find out a little more about Cindy Little. So y'all stay tuned. And we're back with Cindy Little. Hey, we left off talking a little bit about equipment and your tri-field meter being your blanket for security.
Yeah.
And you and I have had conversations in the past about dowsing rods, which is one of my favorite tools to use. It's one of the tools that I get a lot of response from. I'm curious because if I remember correctly, I may not say this right, you don't have as much faith in them as I do due to the idiomotoristic aspect of it, which is basically unconscious movement that I'm making happen in the dowsing rods. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. And that goes back to triangulation. And what you're talking about is the idiomotor effect. And you run into that variable with dowsing rods, Ouija boards, pendulums, anything where somebody is touching something. There can be unconscious, minute movements. So, but if somebody's used the dowsing rods, for example, for a long time, I tend to put more trust in that person being able to hold their hands steady. Now, pretty much the exact same, well, not the exact same thing, but something else could be said about my tri-field meter, which I put a lot of faith in. If I'm seeing some kind of electrical anomaly, I'm thinking, well, there's something in this environment here that is anomalous. Maybe, maybe not. These EMF meters can pick up signals from miles away. So, if I'm just looking at my tri-field meter and it's starting to kind of go crazy, there's most likely something going on in the environment, but maybe not. It could be something, a few blocks away that's a very strong signal that is affecting my meter. Just like the dowsing rods, they could be picking up on something genuine, or it could be someone shaking their hands a little bit. So that's where it's really great if you can have somebody doing audio recording, video recording, the dowsing rods, the EMF, and then if you're all catching something unusual, it's more valid. There's more credibility there.
Oh, definitely. That triangulation, as you refer to, I see that a lot, especially with my Paranormal Brain Trust. That's one reason y'all have that title, is because I do trust your experiences, and I find you to be credible. And that's part of it, is the fact that we are always checking in with each other. Did you get this? This is what I'm getting. What do you, and so it makes for a more credible investigation result, in my opinion.
Yes, mine too.
Definitely. And let's go back for a moment to the night that you actually saw the apparition here at the Palace Theater. There's a lot of talk about environmental factors, the electromagnetic fields and lightning storms. I personally think that there is some kind of correlation, I guess, if you will, to trains. Every location that I have had an experience that I felt was credible, paranormal, most likely experience, was very close to a railroad track, very close. And as you know, here at the theater, it's literally 15 feet from the door, so it's very close. Was there anything in particular that evening that you felt contributed to the environment to make it easier for you to have that experience, or is it really just as random as we really think it is?
I can't say. I mean, I wish I could. It was my very first visit to the palace. I mean, if it had been my 5th, 6th, 10th, whatever, maybe I'd have been able to answer that question better. But it was the first time I'd ever been in the basement. So, I wasn't really paying attention to environmental factors at that time.
Yeah, we do learn a lot more about those things as we go, don't we?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's going to be another topic in the future, by the way, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back. And so let's talk about some of those theories right now, just a couple of quick ones off the top of your head, because we're definitely going to be delving into those in more depth in the future as well.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of studies out there in the discipline of parapsychology where there's a very strong connection between our minds and what we perceive as paranormal activity. For example, there is a very strong connection between our minds and poltergeist activity. There's many, many poltergeist cases that aren't paranormal at all. They are people unconsciously moving things in the environment with their minds.
And they're doing that with their actual mind, brainwave, for
Yes.
lack of a better word, versus they did it physically and then forgot about it.
No, this is telekinetic.
Okay.
They can move things with their minds. And a lot of times in poltergeist cases, it's unconscious. It comes from a lot of stress. It's kind of how certain people relieve stress. And they don't understand what they're doing is, moving things around in the room as a result of their stress. And what these studies have shown is that once that's identified and they are taught meditation or relaxation, the activity stops.
Oh, wow.
As well as people are able to, there's a theory out there that people are actually able to create apparitions and project apparitions. It's not a very popular one. Of course, the very popular one in the paranormal community is what we're seeing is a spirit of a deceased person. Well, there's other theories out there. This may not be anything to do with the spirit realm at all. This may be having to do with you creating basically a projection of a person that you know, that you can see and that others can see. It's not a hallucination. It's something that you're projecting with your mind.
Which brings to mind Sebastian and Philip, the two ghosts that were created intentionally by researchers. And so is it something along those lines?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Look up the Philip experiment. You already know about the Philip experiment. It's a lot of fun that, yes, these researchers created a poltergeist.
Oh, and we will definitely have a link on the page sometime within the next week or two to that. If you haven't read it yet, it's fascinating. This is not something that happened in the last 10 years. This was in the 70s?
It was in the 70s, yeah. And you'll see some pretty groovy outfits on the researchers. But it's a really interesting experiment.
It was really cool. And that brings up a thought that I've had a couple of times. I don't know that I've actually shared this with anyone, but are we maybe creating some of these experiences here at the Palace? Because for several of us, we've been doing this for 5, 6, 7 years here in the same place. And I've wondered, is this something that we're creating?
It's
possibly.
To me, it's a definite possibility. And that's where, I look at and I know you're going to be talking about this in another show about the Gansfeld experiments.
Yes.
As well as, the things that you're picking up on. You're very familiar with the history and the people who inhabited this place. It's something that should definitely, at least in my opinion, be kept under consideration. And that's where, you talk about where people's assumptions are and biases are. That's where mine is. If you were to pin me down, I would say there is in my opinion, there is a 90% chance that this is something that we are somehow creating with our minds. And there's a 10% chance that there is something going on with the spirit world. So when you're talking to me and you're saying, spirits this, spirits that, it's where I need to really check my bias and say, I can't rule that out. That is a possibility. But I'm also seeing these people with these incredible minds that are psychic, that are sensitive, that, and looking at all the literature and all these studies and what we can do, we can move things in the environment. We can manipulate things. We can even manipulate our own tech. We might be creating our own EVPs. We might be creating our own EMF spikes. It's just, I'm not saying that is the case, but it's something that I always keep under consideration.
And I think you have to. My personal experiences so far are the individuals that say, no, definitely, this is what's happening. It can only be this way. Aren't very good investigators. And I don't usually want to talk to them much longer than hearing that opinion twice, because it's just too unknown.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I love about this group and investigating with all of you, because we all come at it differently, but we're all open enough to think about other people's point of view on what's going on. I appreciate that.
I do too. And I'm so glad that you're part of our group. We're going to end our show today on that, but I can guarantee our listeners, Cindy will be back. Thanks again, Cindy. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You are listening to Topic Paranormal with your host, Georgina Holzmeyer, and the Paranormal Brain Trust, Robert M. Brown, Nick Landy, and Rachel Sosa. Topic Paranormal covers Paranormal Talk, Paranormal Tales, Paranormal Training, and so much more. Experience the topics of conversation on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Topic Paranormal. Have a topic suggestion or a question? Send an email to topicparanormal@gmail.com or post it to the Topic Paranormal Facebook page. Topic Paranormal is part of the Astronet Radio family. Visit astronetradio.com for more awesome podcasts.
This episode copyright 2019 by astronetradio.com. All rights reserved.